John McDonnell joins us live on the programme. Mr McDonnell, it has been a while, so I do hope you're well.
Very well, very well. Good to speak to you again.
So let's talk spring statement. If you have a crystal ball in front of you, you may well consult it, but also you might have a wish list. What do you want to see from the Chancellor today?
Could I just address Mark Harper's point? Because I think he's made a valid point. I would like the national insurance rise scrapped, but you have to say where else you could find the money for the NHS and social care. And a number of think tanks, including the TUC, did recommend to the Chancellor at the time, what you can do is basically tax wealth at the same rate as you're taxing income. So in other words, tax capital gains tax at the same rate as income tax. And that would bring in the estimate 17 billion. So actually it would be ideally suited to cover the amount that the Chancellor would want to raise. That's just as an aside, because I thought it was important that Mark made that point, that if you are going to scrap something, you've got to replace it with something else. And this could be the way in which you have a fairer taxation system. Well, the first step towards it anyway. I think the most important thing for me is you've got to protect people. You've got to inflation-proof, first of all, those people who are going to be hit the hardest in this coming months, and they're people on pensions and benefits, but also the low paid as well. And therefore, you've got to inflation-proof increases in pay as well. That's the first thing. The second, I do think it is about controlling prices. I think we need to make sure that we're capping the profits made by the energy companies. We saw the figures from the think tank Commonwealth that identified the profit rates of some of the energy companies as 42, 45%. In addition to that, I think we need to look at other prices that we have to control. The Mayor for London, Sadiq Khan, has said, let's have a rent freeze. I called for that last year. I think rent controls are part of it. And Andy Burnham up in Manchester, making sure now he has control over buses, we make sure that we prevent fare increases as well. So packages like that, where we protect people's incomes, inflation-proof them, then also reduce an element of the costs that are falling upon them, I think is absolutely key. The other issue for me as well, and I do criticise the government for this over a long period of time. Look, we need to go for green growth. And the first step on green growth in the way in which we can help people with their energy bills is insulation. We've been calling for this for over a decade. And if we could have capital investment in insulation programs now, it would increase the number of jobs that we've got. The predictions by about 450,000. It would insulate people's homes and reduce their energy bills. I think that's the sort of package I'd like to see today. And I think we've got to recognise how tough it is for people out there, and therefore they need assistance now.
Sure, I think both you and I would agree that if much, if any of that gets into the Chancellor's statement today, you'll be a lucky man, Mr McDonnell. But I wonder what your view is of borrowing right now. I mean, you and I spoke an awful lot back when you were Shadow Chancellor, and you often got criticised with that phrase, you know, the magic money tree. Yeah. You know, given what we have seen over the past couple of years in terms of borrowing, I wonder whether you somewhat feel that your stance has been vindicated.
Well, it has, but, you know, I told you so isn't a particularly good phrase, to be honest. I want to look to the future. I think what we've got to do is make sure that we're responsible in everything that we do. And the responsible way forward is to recognise that in times like this, there's real hardship out there. People are suffering. We're talking about people. It is true, people choosing between heating and eating. We're talking about people who've had their wages virtually frozen for nearly 12 years. It's tough out there. So yes, we've got to protect people in this short term. And that does mean an increase in borrowing in the short term. But the most important thing is, I said time and time again in our interviews, you borrow to invest. And that's why investment in alternative energy sources, in insulating our homes, is the right thing to do at the moment, because you'll reap such huge rewards. And actually, in terms of energy and alternative energy sources and insulation, you'll reap them pretty quick as well.
Sure. Mr McDonnell, given our previous conversations, you might not be happy about this, but whenever we have talked, we've always ended up talking about what's going on within the Labour Party, and so it is again today. Recently, of course, you did pull out of the Stop the War rally after pressure from the Leader's office because of their stance over, the extent to which NATO is responsible for what is going on in Ukraine. Were you entirely happy to withdraw from that event? And genuinely, what is your view of the extent to which NATO is responsible, from Stop the War's position, for what we're seeing?
I withdrew my name for the statement and withdraw because the leader of the Labour Party said so, because also the statement was out of date. And I said then, we're in a war situation. What we don't want is internal political debates and discussions like that. And it would be a complete distraction from the focus that we should have on securing peace. We've got time to debate the issues around NATO and Russia and the long term. What we've got to do now, every word we use now has got to be about securing peace, and we shouldn't be distracted from that. Too many people are suffering at the moment. So that was my focus then. It's my focus now. And remember, people seem to forget, I was one of the people who helped set up the Ukraine Solidarity Campaign over 10 or 11 years ago. We were campaigning with Ukrainian trade unions and others, trying to secure the long-term democratic future of the Ukraine. I think that's the issue for me now. And I think there will be a time when we debate the security system for the whole of Europe in the future, what will reassure people, what will give us peace. Now I think the focus has got to be on securing peace.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are out of time, so we can't even debate it here. John McDonnell, good to have you on the programme once again. Do take care.
Thank you.